Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where you're joining us in the world today from. Welcome to this episode of In the Code Garden. Today, we're talking Get Started with Git, especially targeting any students and rising developers. If you don't know what a rising developer is, it's you. Anyone who wants to learn some more and upskill in any way to help their growth in technology. So yeah, we're getting started with Git in this episode 1 of a 2-part series for April, and we're going to work on in a couple weeks' time working in teams with Git. But we'll give you everything you need to know today. If you haven't done it before, you need a bit of a refresher, or you want some more background on the concepts to help you solidify your understanding. So I'm Renee Noble. I'm a regional cloud advocate for the Australia, New Zealand, and general APAC region. Bringing you live streams from the Microsoft Reactor. I love Python. I love data science. I love a little bit of web development, and I love teaching and community mostly. So I'm here to bring all that stuff to you. Let's get on with the show. Today, we're going to be talking about what version control is. We're going to talk about what Git is and what GitHub is. We're going to get ourselves ready on GitHub. So if you haven't made a GitHub account, I recommend doing that because you'll be using that today. And we're going to be talking the key concepts behind Git, what it is and how that all works to make sure your code stays safe, and you can deploy it and do cool stuff with it. And we're going to, most importantly, give it all a go. So I'm going to take you through how to do that. Thank you to everyone who's saying hello in the chat. Please drop in where you are joining us from in the world. Say hi, and I will be taking questions throughout the show, so feel free to drop them in there anytime. I'd love to answer them. And thank you, Belinda. This is my actual background filled with mostly actual plants. Only some of them are made of Lego. So that we've made an actual real-life code garden to code in. So today, our code gardening tools are going to be Visual Studio Code and GitHub, which we'll be using in the browser. We're also using the GitHub extension in Visual Studio Code, or more specifically, the version control extension that should come native when you've installed Visual Studio Code. I'll also show you a couple of other cool in-browser tools that you can do all this stuff through as well. So for later on, you might want to do a little bit more stuff at home. So I'm going to drop in a link to our Cloud Skills Challenge for this month. Where you can practice your GitHub skills and keep on building them and do a little bit more practice. So that's in the chat right now. Okay, but yeah, let's get on to version control and Git and GitHub and what is all of this? How does it all fit together? So first, we've got version control, which is really an ideology. It's like we should probably make sure our code is safe. And sometimes we make changes to code and we want to go back, or sometimes two people are working on code at the same time. We need to be able to put it together, things like that. It's an ideology behind that. Then we've got Git, which is a specific implementation of version control, an open source, framework, essentially, some keywords and concepts that they've implemented in a specific way. And then we have GitHub, which is the GitHub platform, which is using Git and building a platform and adding tools around all of that. So that's our general overview. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about all of that one at a time. Yeah, we've got our concept, we've got our implementation, and our platform. And we give lots of extra tools, not just for storing your code, but also for like deploying your code and running your tests and all that kind of stuff is what you get in GitHub. So it's not just about keeping your code safe and working in teams. But it is more than that, which is really cool. And we keep building more stuff on it all the time. So let's talk about version control, because you might be like me and you might have had something in your life, maybe while at university, that looked like this, where you had a bunch of different drafts of a project and you're working as a team. Maybe you need to keep up to date with what's the most recent one. You think you're done. You've made project final. You've made project super final. What's the real one? So we don't want that because it's a bit messy and you might be like, oh, we had a really good piece of code or maybe paragraph or something web page at some point, 3 weeks ago or something like that. Where was it? How do we get it back? It's gone missing in the final project. We don't want that. So version control, that's what it's here for, to give us essentially a running log of the changes that get made, so we can go back and say, hey, actually this part up here was really great and we want to bring that back. We lost it at some point, let's get it back in here. And you might also have snapshots essentially of you can kind of see these are each a snapshot of the project, but they're all disjoint, they're not connected anyway, they're just different files of the same stuff. So having snapshots that are actually interconnected and based on what changes have been made help us, be able to identify a great point in time. And finally, we've got like conflicting code. So we might have two different files, they need to become one. A lot of it's the same, some of it's different. How do we handle that? So version control is the ideology that says we should deal with this in some way. And there's a lot of different places, different protocols essentially that do this. So these are Git, which is the most common, most popular, and the one that's deployed on GitHub. SVN, which is Subversion, CVS, concurrent version systems, Bazaar, and Mercurial. So you might have heard of a couple of those, and yeah, you might be using some of those, but most likely you are using Git. So that's why we're going to talk about Git today. So it is the most commonly used, and each of these different protocols has has some different features because they have implemented the ideology of version control in a different way. So in Git, we can make branches. So I could create a project and someone could branch off that to add a new feature and later bring that back into my piece of code. And we have the best of both worlds then. You can switch between different branches. So maybe I'm working on a few projects and I want to be able to do some of this feature over here, but then I'm working on another one, maybe with another team, and I'm switch over to have different code. So I don't have to have pieces of code that are related to different projects. I can just switch my context easily. There's lots of integrations for Git, like being able to deploy websites and deploy specific branches of a website to a website. So you might have a live website and you might have a main branch or a master branch that gets deployed automatically, for instance. And you might have a development branch that gets deployed somewhere else, secret, that only you and your developers can know about. And there's lots of platforms like GitHub where it makes using all of these tools easy, connects you up to more integrations, ways to deploy things with cloud services, things like that. So that's what we get with Git. But how does it actually work behind the scenes? Git works on what we call diffs or differences. So if I had some code like this one on the left here, I might make some changes to it. And we're going to do at some point what we call a commit. And I'm going to talk more about commits and all this later. But essentially, I'm going to call it like a super save, where we say, this is where I want to say this piece of code should go up to the cloud. Other people should be able to access it in our team potentially. Or I want to just, make a log of it so I can go back to this, even if it's just within my local environment. Which you can just use Git within your own computer. Doesn't have to be on the cloud. So you might be doing that. So I might have this piece of code, imagine the red lines on there, and then I go in through and I make some changes. These might be deleting a line, adding a new line, editing a line. So we had what was on the left. Now we have what is on the right here. So we can see that a new line's been added. This heading here has been changed. Some extra classes have been added. Some things are just deleted outright. So that's, rather than having to store another version of the file for each bit every time we make changes, so we can have that snapshot when we make a commit, we actually just store what got changed. So what line, what is there now as compared to what was there before. And Git does some great stuff to work out where the new parts have been added, because the lines will change. You might add a whole new chunk of code in somewhere, and you don't want to just be like, well, everything from there down is now different because actually most of the code will be the same. You've actually only added 3 lines. So it'll do some clever stuff to work out what part has been added or removed. So by just keeping track of those things, we don't have to have a copy of the files every time around like we did with this picture, which is just taking up more room. We just have very short messages that essentially say what's been changed. So that's how Git works behind the scenes. So bringing that onto GitHub, why do we need GitHub? Well, it's a way to essentially back up our files online is one of the key parts, I would say, where we have it all in the cloud. And when it's on the cloud, it also means it's easy for people in your team to also access those files and contribute to those files, and everyone can stay in sync using the cloud. It also has tools to work with each other. For instance, having people, make those branches, and then having ways to ensure that your branches don't conflict when they come back together. And before you deploy something, for instance, it might, make sure that your tests still work even once we've added in 2 pieces of code from different people, things like that. So you have lots of teams, ways to do that, or ways to say, hey, I've made some updates to this. I've taken your code and made some updates. Can we please put them into the main area of code? I just need a peer review on that. So there's a way that GitHub will allow you to review each other's code, leave notes, leave messages, give it the tick of approval before things get added together. So it's got all that ways to look at your code, and also lots of ways to integrate with other platforms to deploy your website. Like with Azure, super easy to just say, hey, I've got a GitHub repository that has my web app in it. I just want to connect that up, and then we're going to deploy it to the web. And one of the things I've wondered, like going through university, having never built a website, is like, how does it actually get on the internet? And it's as easy as using one of these cloud hosting tools and saying, I have a repository of code here and I want it to go on the internet. Please take that and use it. So that's some of the great stuff you can do with GitHub. So let's actually take a look around GitHub and talk about what you can make. So I have gone to my GitHub profile. When you go in, you might see something. If you're already using GitHub, you'll have probably some sort of list, maybe your repositories, whatever you've got going on. So yeah, I'm going to actually start just by making a repository, or a repo as we call it. And it's so easy, you just click new repo. And I don't want a template. I have a lot of organizations I'm in. I'm going to put it under my own name. I'm going to call it Git Demo. You can call it whatever you like. It doesn't have to be unique to the whole world. It just has to be unique to yourself. You could put in description, learning Git. I'm going to make mine public. You can also make yours private. With a free account, you get some private repositories, and then as many public ones as you want. And obviously, I'm happy for you to all have my repos, so I'm making this one public. Whenever I do this, make a new repo. I love to add a README. Just makes the next step just slightly easier from my perspective, where it takes you straight to a specific kind of view, which I like to see, and sets up the README for you. And great repos have a great README, which tells people how to engage with that repo, maybe any things, tools that they might need to get set up. Something called a git ignore. You might have a bunch of files that you don't want to be pushed to your repo online. These might be secrets and key codes and things like that you want to have for your local development, but you don't want to ever get pushed to the internet, because then someone might steal them and do malicious things with them. So for instance, if I was making a Python repo, this will set it so it doesn't automatically ignores some of the files when I'm going to do my commits. It won't be like, oh, but you haven't remembered to add your environment variables, which I never want to add, so it won't bug me to say these are still waiting and they're new, if they won't be sitting and getting in the way. If you're producing something that you want to license in a specific way, you have that option to mark it there. But I'm just going to leave that blank. So we've made a new repo. We can see here, beautiful README. And yeah, we've got now git ignore, so it will tell you what it's going to ignore. And you can always go through and edit these things if you wanted to not ignore specific things, or you wanted to ignore different kinds of files that aren't in there by default. So we have that. So we've had a little look around GitHub. There's a bunch of different buttons. As I said, you can work in teams with your peer reviews. You do a pull request to say, please pull my code, and your team will review it and things like that. A lot of different features in here to work together. So yes, we have made a repo on GitHub. I'm now going to go and clone it into VS Code. Okay, so there's a couple of things we can do actually. I'll start with just some side notes. So I'm just going to duplicate this tab because there's something called github.dev, which is really useful. And you can either go to it by just changing this to dev instead of com, or you could, from this repo, just on the screen, if you just press the full stop button, the period button, then you can just get there. But I'm just going to change it manually so you can see it on the screen. So we can go to VS Code in the browser, and depending on what project you're doing, this might work just fine for you. If you're doing some sort of web development thing and you don't need to run code, and if you just want to display browser things, or maybe you're making a markdown file or something like this, you can do that all through here because you need to run your code, which is really cool. So you can see for instance, our README here, and I could say add stuff to it. So I could do all that in here and have all those features without even having to go into another system. I've just gone straight from GitHub. Another cool thing you might want to look into is code spaces, which is if you want to do it, it's something in the browser, but you do need to be able to run, for instance, Python code. You could create a code space that essentially spins up a container. If you don't know what that is, don't worry. It's just a little system in the cloud that will run your code for you. And you have essentially something that looks like this, but is plugged into a cloud computing area that will run your code. So it's a lot like working on your own computer, but you use the power of whatever cloud computing capabilities you need. And there's some great, you get a lot of free hours, whether you're a student or a professional, for code spaces at the moment. So yeah, definitely give that a try if you are interested in that. But for now, I'm going to get this and put it on my own computer. So I'm going to go to local. I'm going to use SSH. And I'm going to copy this right here. And then I'm going to go across to VS Code. So I'm going to click this button here, clone git repository. So I want to clone from GitHub, so I'm just going to paste this in, and then I'm just going to hit enter. And now it just wants me to put it somewhere. I'm going to put it with my many other Git demos. So let's put it right here. Now, I do want to open it. So as we can see, we had our README that we were editing before. You might notice it doesn't say hello because in the browser I did write hello, but I did not commit it. So it's not in this one that I have here. So now we have all of this, and we have a repo on our local computer. So very, very cool. You might be going, but what if I already have some code on my computer? For instance, you didn't know about GitHub until right now. You haven't used Git before. Or sometimes I even just want to get started on a project. I just open VS Code and I just make a new project. I'm like, I'm just going to write some code. And then I go, silly me, I need to make sure I have version control on this, because otherwise, what if my computer dies? And then where's it going to be backed up to? So you might be like, okay, I better actually create a repository for this. And I want to do it using the stuff that I've already written. So I don't want to go and create one and then have to come back and get it into this new place that I've made. So I actually just want to say, hi, I have some code. I'm in this, this area, and I want to do git init, which is saying, please initialize me a Git repo. And if you have all your credentials already in VS Code, so you can see here, hopefully, that I'm signed in to GitHub in VS Code, then it will just go, oh, cool, Renee, yeah, I know you're GitHub, I'm going to just go and make a repo for you, and this stuff's all going to be in it. So we've now got our code in VS Code, whether we've had code and we put it in, or we created a repo and we added something else later and brought it down to ourselves. So we've got a couple of options there. So let's talk about what is Git and what are we going to do? Now we have this repo, how are we going to use it? So we're going to talk about 3 key concepts today. These are your essential concepts for just getting started. And this might be perfect if you are working on a project by yourself. Maybe you're a hobbyist developer, or you're making your own website or something like that. Or you're working on a university project or school project, and it's just you working on it, and you just want a way to save that code, get it in the cloud, keep it safe, and then, yeah, just have it up there in case anything goes wrong, because things can go wrong. I've been there. My computer broke in my honors year of university, and I was very, very glad that I was using GitHub and all my code was safe and I could get it all back, because that would have been a bad time. So let's talk about how we go about doing the steps to make those snapshots essentially and get them on the cloud, and what that actually means. Because the concepts behind Git can be a little bit confusing if you're like, well, how is this different than saving something? What are the different phases? So, yeah, we're going to talk about it in a metaphor. Why is Git like a shopping trip? And we're going to talk about how it's a lot like browsing, going to the register, buying your items, and then maybe posting it on Instagram. So let's get started with this metaphor. So step 1, we're at the shops and we're starting shopping. We've got a trolley full of things, of stuff we've pulled off the shelf, thinking, yeah, I think I might want to buy this today. This seems kind of good. I'm going to give it a try. Maybe try it on, see how this blue shirt fits me, etc. This is the equivalent of us coding our website, our program, whatever. Just like you might have been coding all this time without version control, you're just doing your normal stuff. And whatever you're doing, you're looking at your website in the browser, you're running your Python code, you're compiling things, whatever you're doing, it's all the same. You're trying it on, and nothing is different here. And essentially, it's like pulling things off the shelf. You can always put things back on the shelf. You're like, oh, actually, I don't like the blue shirt. I tried it on, just doesn't suit me. Let's put it back. Just like, oh, I tried this line of code, it didn't work. Or I didn't like how that picture looked on my website. You just get rid of it. So you do all this. You're coding, you're saving, you're deleting, you're saving, etc. All the same. And yeah, when you're happy with your trolley and you've saved it, so, putting something in your trolley is like saving it. You can always take it out and, save it again, essentially. But then we're ready. When we're ready, we're happy with our trolley, we can go to the register. So when you have some items that you're like, yes, I definitely want to get these, you put them on the conveyor belt. And this is what we're doing. We're adding something to what we're going to commit in a minute. So we're adding these to the conveyor belt. They're going to get scanned by the person at the checkout. I'm going to note, you don't have to buy all of your items at once. You don't have to be like, oh, it's in my trolley, everything in the trolley, get out. You might keep some of your stuff in the trolley for later. For instance, I run a business on the side. Sometimes I might want to buy some groceries, but I also want to buy something as a business expense. So I'll put something on the conveyor belt, then I'll pay for them. And then I'll put some other stuff on the conveyor belt and I'll pay for them in a separate transaction. That way, I'm going to get 2 receipts for my transactions. And this thing is all about getting those receipts. So we can put things on there. And this is our Git add step. So with Git, I'm going to show you the graphical user interface tools that are part of the VS Code extension. But you can also do all of this from the command line. So if you want to add something, you say git add, and you might specify a specific file that you want to add. When you add something, it's called staging your changes. So that's putting it on the conveyor belt. So we've put all these things on the conveyor belt. They're getting scanned by the nice person at checkout. And before you actually make the purchase, it's very easy to be like, actually, I don't really like these pink shoes, or they're a bit over my budget. Can you just take those off? And they'll just be like, oh, yeah, I'll just remove those from this transaction. And I'll put them back. Or, oh, I accidentally put them through in the wrong transaction. I'm going to put those through in my business expenses in a second, for instance. So very easy to say, oh, no, thank you to the things at this point. So once we're happy, I'm like, yes, okay, now I'm getting the blue shoes, I'm getting the pink shoes and the blue shirt. I'm ready to pay for this. We create the transaction. And this is where we're making our commit in terms of our code. So we said these lines of code or these files, I'm committing these. I want to get a receipt, essentially, for a record, as we call it in Git, for this snapshot of my code. And it will have the things that I have paid for, bought in this transaction, if we're talking shopping, or the changes I've made if we're talking code. Good thing to remember is, just like when you go to shops, you've got your receipt. You can always take things back and be like, I gave these pink shoes as a gift to my friend and she just didn't like them, or she already had them, so I'm just going to return these. So because we have these receipts, we can undo things because we know where they came from, how much they cost in terms of shopping, or in terms of code, we know what line of code was changed, what files were impacted. We can undo a whole receipt or part of that. So this is our commit step. And when we're doing this in the terminal, in the command line, we'd say git commit. And my favorite way to do it is -m, which is for message. And then I just write the message I want to say. So this might be like, added new landing page to my website. So it's something, and that will be on your record or your receipt. Okay, so we've done all that. Now we get to Instagram, which I was trying to think about, like, what is pushing in terms of shopping. And my interpretation is, you've bought these cool things, you take a photo and you want to put it on Instagram or whatever social media is your preferred one. Because you want the rest of the world to know about what you've purchased. So you're putting it up there in the cloud. You might also say, actually, I've got a few more transactions, commits I'm going to make. I'm not going to push this up until I've got my whole outfit sorted. So I'm going to go to another shop, or I'm going to keep shopping here. I'm going to get a hat and some jeans as well. So you might do another one, and you don't have to push everything after every commit. You can just, I'll do one commit, I'll do another commit in a few minutes, and an hour later. It's good to push things because it does go to the cloud. But if you're working on a branch with multiple people, maybe you want to wait till a specific project or a small feature of that project is finished. So in this example, we've done two records, receipts, transactions, and we're like, yeah, okay, this ensemble is great. I want everyone to know about what I've bought at the shops today. It's terrific. So we can now take that picture of our great ensemble and push it to the internet. The thing is, you've pushed it, now everybody knows about it. You can still go back in time because you might be like, no, actually that was not right. I need to, this ensemble is just not going to work for this event, for instance, or this code has a bug in it and I need to make some changes. It's live on the website now and it's breaking things, so we need to take this back. So you've got problems like that if you have pushed that, but pushing is an essential part of the process. So what happens if you push something and you need to take it back? Well, in terms of our Instagram photo thing, people are all talking about your new outfit, so they all know about it. So it might be a bit awkward if you've taken it back. Your best friend might have also gone and bought a matching outfit, and now you've got rid of yours. So that's going to be a bit weird too. So what does this actually line up to? Well, in terms of, we've pushed our code, we've probably do this if we're not working alone. If we are working alone, this doesn't really matter because it's just a cloud copy of our own work. But when we're working with other people, they've gone and gone, oh, cool, there's a new commit, there's a new push from Renee. I need to get the latest code because I want to work on that code as well. And that's a lot like your best friend going and buying the same outfit so you can be matching. So now they've got a copy of your code. And if they're working on that code now and you've gotten rid of that big new feature, there's going to be some clashing when you go, oh no, I had to delete that, and they've gone and built a whole thing on top of that work. So that's why we need to be careful when we're pushing to think about how is that interacting with the rest of our team. And we're going to talk more about that in the next episode when we're talking about branches and forks and merging. But yeah, pushing essentially makes it available to the rest of your team and they can work on it as well. So we've got all that down now. So let's go and give it a go. So I'm going to go back to VS Code and we're going to get started with things. But yeah, if you have any questions so far about this shopping metaphor, please drop them in the chat because yeah, GitHub can be a bit tricky to get started with. So yeah, let me know and I'll hopefully be able to answer them for you. But while I wait for any questions, I'm going to add a new file. You can just see that this thing just lit up here because we're going to be using this extension. I should actually flag that route now before we get started. So this is the source control extension. We can already see that it's got some things lighting up. It says readme.md, so that's our readme file markdown. Has got some changes because we've added a new line. If I add some more stuff to it, I can't add it in this mode seemingly because I'm in the working tree. We go back to this file. I'm going to say hello here. We can then see that we've added hello. So we're seeing the diff here as I was talking about earlier. So now we might want to add another file, for instance. So I'm going to go and say I'm making a Python project. I'm going to call it test.py. And I'm just going to do print hello. Okay, so let's go back to our version control. We can now see that there's this new file here. And yeah, we might be like, yes. Well, firstly, I'm going to need to save that file. Because if I do this, it does show the thing, but before we actually commit it, we need to save it so it works properly. So we'll do that. We'll get rid of this one. Here we go. Okay, so we've got our beautiful Python file here. We can run it. So we're working on our file. We're running it. Here we go. So we can run this. I've got the Python extension so I can see what a beautiful file. I think this is really great. I don't want to lose this progress. So I'm going to commit this. I'm also going to commit the, I'm going to commit in two separate commits. Let's make it. Firstly, my updated README. So I'm just going to say updated README. Maybe I've added, add welcome, making descriptive commit messages will be helpful in the future if you're like, oh, where is that thing where I added the front page or I deleted that piece, because you might want to go back and find it, and the more information you can succinctly put in there, the better. So getting something just in that short heading is very useful. So I'm going to start by committing that. Then let's have a look back at we'll have a look back here and we'll see, have we got any changes here? So we can inspect the files individually. We haven't got any changes here yet because I have not pushed the code. So it's not going to show up in the cloud just yet. But I might next add our Python test file. Looking pretty good. It's a new file. We're going to add that in here. So it's in my stage changes now. Add test file. I'm going to commit that. And as I said before, that's not going to be up there in the cloud yet because we haven't done this sync changes button. So I can either do the sync changes button or I can do one of these many buttons in here. So pull would be to get the code from the cloud. Maybe your teammates have made some changes, so you want to pull it. Push it is to essentially, is to just push it up to the cloud. Sync is a combination of push and pull because it wants to make sure it's going to check first that there isn't any clashes with your code, and then it's going to push your code up. If you do have things that are clashing when you try to push, it will give you some sort of warning and messages if they're conflicting in a particular way. So if someone's made a completely new file in a completely different area, it doesn't impact your work, it's not going to say anything, but it's pretty smart. So it's there to help you out and make sure everything doesn't get messed up. So I'm going to do, just for the sake of it, I'm going to do push here. There's a couple other things here, which are to do with, fetching not just the code, but kind of all the branches and making copies of stuff. But let's do the push. Okay, let's go check it out. Firstly, let's have a look at this file. It now says hello. It's up there in the cloud, safe and sound. And we can also see we have a new file, test.py. So that's all working for us, which is great. Okay, cool. So let's now have a look at, a couple more instances of how we can go about doing some stuff. So let's take a look at how we can do this all in the command line as well. So I'm going to make a new file. I'm going to call this test2.py. And what do I want to do? This one's going to say, hi, everyone. That run. Looks great. Love this code. Let's save that. I'm going to commit that, but I think I don't like test.py anymore. I'm over it. So we could have a look in here, and I might, for instance, say I want to delete this. So if I delete this in here, then it's going to turn up in here as well. So I could add this, say, hey, I got rid of that. But also for the purposes of this, I'm going to try and do it all in the command line. I'm going to have to remember how to remove something in the command line because I haven't done that in this demo before. So I haven't been removing stuff for a little while now. So let's not do that. So we can also unstage changes, and we can discard changes. So I can actually, oops, that's the one we clicked in the wrong place. Discard this change. So I can bring it back to life. So now I'm going to go back here. Test.py is back. It's healthy. So let's do some stuff in the command line. Okay. I'm actually going to add a couple more lines to this one. So let's say print hi, and then I'm going to create a variable. Okay, we've got some code because I wanted something a little longer so we can play with some of the tools. So let's firstly let's make an adjustment here. Okay, we've made another change there, and I'm going to start by saying git status in our command line here. So we can see what's going on. We've got a modification in the README. We've added test2.py, and that's what we can see is happening. You can also see that I'm on the main branch. In my bash, I have set up some cheats, well, essentially the syntax, just so the prompt here will tell me what branch I'm on. But we'll talk more about that in the next episode. But yeah, let's do some adding. So I could do git add, and I could just, if I do git add, let's say git status, have you added everything? No, okay. Because I think if you never add everything, because I always want to look at the files individually. So I'm like, what is the command for that? But yeah, let's do git add in a way that I would recommend more highly. So, but I think if you do git add star, it will add all of your files for you. So yeah, now we can see that the main has changed color here because it's got things staged. So let's go git status, which is to see what's going on. And here are my changes to be committed. This is our stage changes area. But as I said, I want to not do them like that. So yeah, let's go, and now I have to remember how to unstage them. Git. 1 second. Not as working as a cloud advocate, you don't work in a team as much, and you forget all of the things that are second nature. Git reset. That's what I want. Git reset. Whoop. Not up there. Reset. It's going to put them all back where they came from. So let's do this here one more time and see git status. Here they are, back to not being in there. So that's helpful. You can also git reset a specific file. So let's talk about doing things with specific files. So let's say git add, and we're going to do readme. Okay, so now if I do git status, you can see that I have staged the readme. Test2.py is not yet staged. Okay, so let's do what else we want to do. Okay, I'm going to now add part of test2.py. So we've added a whole file with readme.md. We're now going to go git add -p. And I think the P stands for part or something. Partition. We're going to break it down. Yeah, I think parts. So, and now I'm going to talk about test.py. No changes. What are you talking about? I don't think I saved it. Yes, I did. It doesn't have the dot. That's a bit. I'm a little bit confused. Guess it's all there. Maybe it's because we had not yet committed it. Let's do an experiment. Git is kind of a little bit magical sometimes. So let's go with git add test2.py first. Okay. Let's now check the status. Everything's there. Let's git commit. -m, and this is my test2. And we've got our readme updates. So I'm going to do that. You can see nothing there to see anymore. I'm going to pop this code back in that I just wrote. So let's have another look. So it's green still because it wants us to push it up. But maybe I don't want to push it yet. I've still got a few things to commit, but in a different, different part of it. I want them in different commits because sometimes you do just want to break it down. So you've got just those records that are easier to follow. Okay, so let's now see what it says about test2.py. Git add test2. It's a -p. Let's save this first. We'll be a little happier. No changes. I'm very confused. We really do have changes. Okay, interesting. Let's give it another go. Here we go. Okay. I'm not entirely sure what just happened there, but we do have all our code now. So we've done git add -p. So that's a flag for parts. So we want to be able to break this down into parts. And I might only want to print out, not print out. I might just want to add one, I want to add just this section, for instance. I don't want to add the variable I've created. Never mind that this code wouldn't work if I did that, but let's just pretend. So I'm going to say, no, I don't want to stage this hunk because I don't want all of this code in this commit. I want to actually I was expecting there to be an S here. But there's not anymore. Interesting. There used to be an S where you can split this hunk. I think it's because it's too small, this hunk. So it's not happy with the idea of me splitting this up some more. So I'm just going to print some more stuff into it. Okay, let's see how it feels about this. Okay, so I'm like, nope, I'm going to Control-C out of that. Let's try it again. No S. Very strange. Okay, one last idea. Let's put this above. Okay, we're putting it above other parts, and hopefully it's going to be friendly this time. Okay, so fingers crossed. Okay, so we've got our we've got one hunk here. So you can see we've got, just going to clear the screen because it's, just a little bit messy. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so we've got this. I haven't saved it up here. It's all going to work out in a second. Okay. We've got this bit at the top. We've got this bit at the bottom. And we don't want to put all of this in. So now, thank goodness, the S is returned. I wanted to do this in two separate parts. I only want to add the part at the top, for instance. Yeah, so now we don't have that if statement I've added at the bottom. We've just got this part at the top. So I'm going to say, yes, I do want to add that. And no, I don't want to add these new lines at the bottom. So now we've got that. You can see the test 2 has been staged, but it's also been modified because there are more changes that we could add. But I'm happy with that like it is. The only other change I want to do is git rm test.py, and that is going to get rid of that one. So we can now see that it's disappeared from up here. And yeah, so we can go git status. We can see we've deleted test.py. We've got the changes from test2.py, but not all of the changes. But I'm ready to commit to this new test2 change, new updates. Remove test1 original, or whatever you might say. And from that, we've got we can see our git log. So we can now see that the last thing we did was we did the test 2 updates, removed the original tests. We have added the test 2 and the README before that. And if I scroll down, we can see our original commits when we added the test and when we added the README and the welcome and the initial commit that we got when we created the repo. So I've got all of that. And hit Q to exit my log like you would if you were using Vim. Yeah, so let's now push that. And now it has gone up, and let's go check it out. So we go back to here. We can see test.py is gone. Test2.py is here. Somehow these got into the last commit, which I'm very confused about. But it's all here. And yeah, so we've got some of the basics covered. Okay, we have a question from Belinda. I used git reset, but it didn't work and asked me to use git rm -- cached. So what's the difference? Okay. That's a great question, and I'm intrigued to see what has happened on your setup. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure what that is. I'm going to have to do a quick search for what git rm -- cached is. So let's all do that together. Because yes, there are ways to paste your work in GitHub. Remove files from your local Git repository. Interesting. So I guess it might depend on where you were in the process. It might be talking about, yeah, so I think things are a bit tricky when you haven't already committed your files. As we saw when I was trying to commit changes to a file that it was new and I wanted to only do parts of the file because it's a bit wrapped up in this file has been created, and it kind of just wants to do the whole file at once sometimes if you don't go about it right. So I think that might be the issue that you're having there. But I can't be 100% sure, but Git is tricky. So I will show you another secret thing that is useful. Because sometimes you're like, oh, I'm just in a sticky situation. So you probably, if you're like, oh no, I think I lost something, or I went back and I want to go forward, or I'm stuck in a weird place, then you go to oh shit Git, and it will help you figure out what's going on. It has a lot of answers about, things that you might be like, oh, you need to change the message on your last commit. That's a very common one where you go, oh, I wish I named it something different. It doesn't look right. I've got the wrong name on it. It's going to be confusing. Then you do this one. You can use amend. There's all kinds of bits and pieces to Git, which we're going to cover in this episode because we're running out of time, and there's just more than I could fit in many episodes. But I think we've got most of our basics covered. This is my hot tip. Go to oh shit Git if you get stuck on something, and hopefully it will help you. So that's now in the chat. We have a question from Anya. How to connect your VS Code with GitHub. Okay, this one, there's a couple of ways to do it. So the way I have mine set up is using SSH keys. So there is somewhere a good place that tells you how to go through and create your GitHub keys. So let's see if I can find that one and drop it in the chat. Set up GitHub SSH keys. Yes, because it's pretty simple once you have these instructions. Because you do have to start, I'll show you where to go to in GitHub, because you'll do it through the browser, but you need to generate the SSH keys from your computer. So to generate your SSH keys, you'll do that in the terminal. So that's what these instructions are all about. It's about creating the files and the content that gives you your public and your private key. And then you're going to put your public key into your clipboard. So once you've done that, you'll just copy it to your clipboard, and you're going to go into GitHub and you're going to find the settings. And then you're just going to paste it in. So basically you're generating essentially a lock and key kind of mechanism, and you're going to have the lock stored on your computer. Don't tell anybody this. And you're going to give the key to GitHub. So let me see where we go with this. Somewhere in here is my SSH keys, etc. So we've got these things here, and we can generate a new key through this menu. And so adding new SSH keys in here, you just generate the text. You might give it, a name. Maybe it's, Renee personal computer or something. And then from your terminal, you'll have generated a public key. I'll just do that because it is a bit confusing if you haven't done it before. So let's do it. Let's do it in VS Code. Okay, so now if I go cat this, the cat's just a way of saying put this on the screen. I get this code, and I can just pick it up, and then I can go and I can drop it in to the place that it came from here. So I could just drop that in here, and then I could give it a title, this is test, and then I'd add the key, for instance. So that's how you would go about doing that. Once you've added that, and your computer that has, with the keys on it, will then, you'll be able to sign in to through here in your little bottom left corner, where I can click sign out. You could click sign in, and you could set that up essentially with your account, and it will know. So the reason I don't have to put any passwords in when I do like git push or git anything is because I am signed in, because I have the SSH keys already on there. So that is how you get set up with that, which can be a bit scary when you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to deal with SSH and keys and generating keys, or I've forgotten lots of times. But I go in here, it's like, where do I get the keys from? I thought you were going to give me the keys. No, I make the keys and I give the keys to GitHub. I give one of the keys to GitHub, just the public key. So yeah, that is how you go about doing that. Yes, you're most welcome, Anya. So yeah, any other questions before I'll start, with the wrap up of the show. But feel free to pop any more in the chat. I'll just tell you, once again, you can do our Cloud Skills Challenge. You can all go on and you can see if there's lots of you doing it. You can see who else is doing it and how they're going, and like how much percent of the challenge you've completed. So I highly recommend that. Yeah, and also we'd love it if you could do our survey, because we love knowing if you like this or not, because we'll do more of the things you like and less of the things you don't like. So I'm just putting in the chat a link to do the survey. And remember to use the event ID 19013 when you do the survey, and tell us if you liked it or not. How, would you do it again? And we've updated the survey. That's even a free form and entry point where you can write your thoughts into it. So those are a couple of things. And then, lastly, what we've got coming up in the Code Garden is episode 2 of this series. So you want to, keep working with GitHub and now work with other people with GitHub and understand how that all works, because it does get a little bit trickier when you add another person or another whole team into the mix, and you want to know how to work as part of that team. So you can join us in 2 weeks' time for episode 2. So I hope you can make it. And then other than that, you can catch, if you're like, I liked when Renee wrote that Python. I wish I knew Python. Or Renee mentioned making a website and being able to deploy it with GitHub. I have previous, series episodes from In the Code Garden here that you can watch to catch up on how to do those things. And then when you come back next week and you know how to do all that, and you'll learn how to work in GitHub as a team, you'll be ready to make some awesome websites as a team or do some cool Python programming. So that's nearly everything. If you're like, I really like that, liked all of this, you can watch this episode on demand later. That's not my YouTube link. 1 second before I send it all out. We want this one. Normally Sarah would be putting all these things in the chat, but Sarah, our lovely producer, has left us to go off to a new adventure at a new job. So I'm handling all of that. So that's where you can watch this on demand later. If you want to watch it all again, you're already on the link, so you just have to keep a track of that link as well. It's the same link. And if you want to watch more and more stuff from the Microsoft Reactor, there's lots of people like me around the world doing streams on lots of stuff, from this to Rust to AI to DevOps to containers to everything. So lots of cool people. So you can check that all out on the YouTube channel for Microsoft Reactor. So that is all I have for you this week. I hope to see you back here in 2 weeks to work on more stuff, working with GitHub in a team. I thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you for your questions. Have a great Easter if you're celebrating that, or Passover, I know, is also today. Have a great celebration if you're having one, or have a great weekend coming up as well. And see you all next time in the Code Garden. Bye, everyone.